all of that force gets unleashed like that, and you can move boulders or do a lot of damage to an enemy while they can't hit you. Never again.
No, back up!
From the get-go, there is one sequence out of the whole video that I specifically had my eyes on, and I was like, I want to do that whole sequence. That was specifically the Stasis Sequence, where Link shoots out this yellow beam and freezes the Juggernaut in place. He can't shoot, he can't move, he's frozen in time. But he can take on damage in that time, and it stores up, kind of like creating this powder keg where it's like doo, 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 as Link keeps shooting the guy, and all that energy that he absorbed is unleashed all at once, and he goes flying backwards into the wall. The newest Zelda game, Breath of the Wild, came out on the Switch. One of my favorite games ever. It's so good. Oh my god, it's so good. Anyway, there's an ability in that game where you can freeze objects, and later on you can freeze enemies. Enable the ability, and you hit it, and then whatever thing you freeze has like these golden glowing chains shoot out of it. Now in the game they kind of like fade away, but they look cool enough. I'm gonna keep it for the whole sequence. Say you freeze a boulder, you punch the boulder a few times, all those punches that you hit over and over again build up so that all of that force gets unleashed like that, and you can move boulders or do a lot of damage to an enemy while they can't hit you. First things first, I want to isolate this Juggernaut from the background, and I did that by using the rotobrush tool. Boom, empty. After rotoscoping it, I duplicated it, and now I'm trying to add this Find Edges effect. Unsharp Mask is great for bringing out detail of different sizes. So using 3 different instances of Unsharp Mask, boom. Now there's a lot more detail. From there, you apply Find Edges, boom. And that's what it looks like right off the bat. Actually just invert it, boom. So we want all inside parts to be kind of darker and black. We tint it to just black and white. We want to remove all color from it because we're going to add the color back in using Video Copilot Color Vibrance, one of my favorite plugins. It's more advanced than tint. The thing that is nice about VC Color Vibrance is that it doesn't just tint everything one color or not. It actually will gradiate the color a little bit depending on how gray that color is. And I bumped up the levels a little bit and another set of levels to brighten it up, but here's the problem. All this noise also gets accentuated. So the noise is becoming an edge and you don't want that. So by using a little bit of fast blur, you get rid of the noise. That starts going away because it's no longer edges for the Find Edges to find. If I turn back on my rotoscope layer, it's just laid on top of it. That's all it's doing. So then I had a second one where I changed the settings a little bit. So you'll actually see him getting brighter a bit. That's just the leftover keyframes I have from him. He gets brighter every time he gets shot. Yeah, Find Edges is a really cool way to add an energy effect to a person. Just have all their outlines just kind of glowing. On top of that, I added like a BG glow, BG background. BG stands for background. I also added this Bevel Edges thing. If I turn off everything except for that. Bevel Edges basically just kind of, do you know what a bevel is, Carmichael? A raised engraving. Slight way of doing like 3D, and that's kind of what's going on here. So you can see how like the light's coming from this side, we hit the edge is bright, and the other side the edge is dark. So this was one of those little creative things that I thought was an interesting addition. So adding the Bevel Edges, this edge circles around his rotoscoped outline here. And then I tinted that, end up with like this flashing sort of effect. But the thing that really like makes this a Zelda reference are the chains when he gets frozen in time. Have I been to Santa's workshop? Did a summer camp there. Never again. It's Mrs. Claus. For the chains, I actually used a program called Element 3D. It's a plugin for After Effects from Video Copilot. Video Copilot typically makes some of the coolest plugins out there. Element 3D has this cool thing where it's like you can create a null object that is a 3D null object that's connected to all the settings for your 3D model. So you don't have to go through and change all like the rotation and position settings within the plugin itself. You just move this little null object. It's like a controller for the 3D model. Basically just take a 3D model of a chain, deleted all the links except for one, rotated it, offset it, and I did that like 20 times and made this really long linked thing in Cinema 4D. I saved that out as a different file and opened that within After Effects Element 3D. So using just a 3D null object, regular After Effects here, I'm able to move these chains around inside of the viewport of After Effects. So this glow kind of coming out of the back of him here. Every time he gets shot in the game, there's an arrow that shows the vector that it's gonna move across when Stasis ends. But for this, it's just going directly backwards because he's getting shot from the front. So instead of having an actual like cartoon arrow sticking out of the back, you want to figure out a way to interpret that into a real world medium. I basically just took the entire layer of the Juggernaut, offset it, added glow, CC radial, fast blur, all that stuff. But of course, we also still have all the hits that are taking place, and for those, we used a bunch of sparks. And I did add tracers because it looked like he was just malfunctioning, like sparking all over the place. So I did add tracers, which are literally just an orange line. And then from there, I just tried to put in as many different like spark elements as I could to have like debris flying through it. It's a pretty sweet shot considering it's 17 frames long. It's 3/4 of a second.
Shorter than this interview.
Right here. Here.
No.
Ren! You bit me!
I just watched you bite your own arm.
That's not in the edit. That's not in the edit. Ow, Clint! You just bit me! Look at that! I don't think we're gonna finish on time.
What do you mean? I just used the shatter effect for the chains too. So the final note that Adrian had for this is he wanted it to be gory. He wanted it to be brutal. So I added in a whole bunch of blood. Blood splatter on the wall, some blood mist in the air. What ties this all together and really makes it feel intense is the crazy displacement map. Displacement maps are like, oh, they're my favorite things in After Effects.